Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a simple guide for contract documents for contractors and subcontractors. So a few housekeeping items to get us started here today. You're going to see a disclaimer on your screen just about the content of this presentation. After the webinar, everyone will receive a recording of the presentation today, and that's also going to include the slides that you'll be able to download. And that'll come via email from AIA Contract Documents either tonight or tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. We're also going to reserve some time directly following the webinar to answer as many audience questions as we can get to. So at any point throughout the presentation, if you have a question, just go ahead and type that into your questions box in GoToWebinar, and we'll do our best to address that once we wrap up the presentation. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Just keep in mind that we'll be going over some standard form contract templates and provisions today, but anything in the presentation or in the Q&A session should not be taken as legal advice. If you feel like you have a related item that requires legal attention, we encourage you to seek out a licensed attorney. So with all that fun stuff out of the way, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves to get everything started. My name is Sarah. I work at AIA Contract Documents, and I help customers use our online software to create their own documents. And I also want to help anyone who comes in contact with AIA Contract Documents understand what the heck they're looking at and how we can help them. And I quite frequently seek help from my colleague, Ben, who's been so kind as to help me out here today. So Ben, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, Sarah. My name is Ben Siegel. I'm the manager of Contract Documents Information. I've been with the AIA since 2005, so I have a long history, and I answer content and usage questions about the documents. And so that means that I man the phone number and email address, so if you've called or emailed, you may have had some contact with me.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, you might have spoken to Ben before, and you might speak with Ben at some point in the future as well. He's helped many people figure out contracts and given them any help that they need. And we'll go over a little bit later how you can get in contact with our document info line if you have any questions beyond today. So I want to acknowledge that there's probably a range in the audience in terms of expertise or even exposure to contract documents, or furthermore, AIA contract documents. So I want to start with the basics here and just get out of the way that AIA contract documents refers to around 200 forms and contracts that we offer for you to use as templates to define the relationships and terms involved in your own design and construction projects. 200 is a huge list. So part of our goal here today is to help you as contractors and subcontractors narrow down that list, get it down to a lot less than 200, and just understand what's out there, which of these forms and contracts relate to you, and how you can get a hold of them to use them in your own projects. Now, the documents are created by the AIA Contract Documents Committee, AIA being the American Institute of Architects. This committee works with our attorneys that we have on staff who are versed in construction law. And the committee has really valuable insight. They are experts from across the country in design, construction, law, insurance, and they help us to create and revise these documents to reflect industry trends and keep up with the ever-changing world of design and construction that most of you in the audience probably know pretty well yourselves. So to get a hold of these templates to be able to use for your own projects, you have a few options. So you can purchase a basic single document from AIA Contract Documents. That's going to involve picking out a standard template. We'll be going through some of our standard templates today that may be of interest to you. You'll plug in your project details, and that'll spit you out a finalized document. If you want to edit the legal language, so any additions or deletions to the document, then you have some options as well. You can get a customizable single document, which allows you to edit the legal language and finalize one document. Or you can get an unlimited access license, which allows you to create, customize, and finalize documents to your heart's content. So if you do end up editing the legal language of your documents, that's going to be done in the online service. So this is our online software that you can use to create and manage your contract drafts and finalize them. And there's going to be in our follow-up email from AIA Contract Documents a link to a demo if you'd like to see how the online service works and how you can use it to help manage your projects from a document standpoint. Then you can sign up for a demo in that follow-up email. So once we've taken some more time to go into detail today about what's available for our contractors and subcontractors, we'll show you exactly where you can go to learn more about the online service and about the documents and how to get your hands on these documents for your own projects. But for now, let's start talking documents here. And we're going to begin our simple guide to the documents available by going over a very popular group of documents. And that's our AIA contract documents that deal with projects that follow a conventional or a design, bid, build, delivery method. We call this our conventional family of documents. And that's going to just involve the owner who is dividing his project into separate contracts for design and construction, being the architect and the contractor. So to prevent the documents that can be used for conventional projects, I'm going to use a visual diagram here in a second. And that's just going to set up the key parties that you'll see in these projects and which documents can define the relationships between the parties. So it's a relationship diagram. This, of course, is going to focus on agreements that involve contractors and or subcontractors. There are more documents in this family than what we present today. But like I said earlier, our goal is to help you narrow down the list of documents and try and keep it simple. So in spirit of the simple guide, we're going to focus on just a subset of the conventional family. So to get us started, we have the owner, who you can assume will be involved in the conventional family, and then he is going to retain an architect who will, of course, prepare the drawings and specifications and then help bid out the work to the contractor. So right off the bat, we have some prime parties here focusing on this very important relationship between the owner and the contractor. You're going to have a few different options in terms of the documents that will be used. And the options are mostly going to revolve around pay structure, which I'm going to explain here in a second, and then I'll get into some more detail as well. So these are the options of documents that can define the relationship between an owner and a contractor in a conventional family. Now, if you're familiar with AIA contract documents or you've seen them before, you're probably familiar with this little alphanumeric that you're going to see before each document title. This alphanumeric just represents an organizational system in place to categorize each document that we use. Each of these letters and numbers actually represents a different aspect of the document. That's not actually important for you to know. Ben and I could go on all day of the nuances of each of these alphanumerics and what they represent. But for the purpose of today, the alphanumeric is just going to serve as a quick and easy way to reference the document as a whole. So when you're working with the documents, you'll always see the alphanumeric as part of the title, but you may also, for example, hear us reference the A101, and that is referencing this entire document. It's just the titles, they're very helpful, but they get kind of wordy. So we'll use the alphanumerics a lot throughout today. So as far as our owner-contractor agreements, you have these four up on the screen now, and they're going to differ in the pay structure that will be used in the owner-contractor relationship. So you can use the A101, which is going to involve a stipulated sum or a fixed price contract, and that's just going to include just a fixed price, flat fee. If you want to work with cost of the work contracts, then you can go with the A102 or A103, depending on if you want the cost it takes to build the work plus a fee with a guaranteed maximum price, which is GMP. The A102 includes the option of a guaranteed maximum price. If you don't want a guaranteed maximum price, so no price ceiling, sky's the limit, you can work with the A103. And then the A104 is going to be an abbreviated owner-contractor agreement. And Ben will get into a little bit in the differences between the abbreviated agreement and the other agreements, but we do have an abbreviated option. We also have an option for even smaller projects, which I'll go into in just a little bit, since we technically consider that in a different family. But those are your options there to define that relationship. Now you'll notice there's no direct contractual relationship between the contractor and the architect. That isn't to say, of course, that they won't be collaborating throughout the project and they have responsibilities that rely on each other. So the roles and responsibilities are coordinated in this umbrella document that is called the A201 General Conditions. And the A201 is for the conventional family. And like I said earlier, this is an umbrella document. It covers the entire project and it just coordinates the roles and responsibilities for the architect, the owner, and the contractor. It's designed to be used in conjunction with these agreements. And you may notice that I've slipped an asterisk there next to the A104. That's because the A104 is not used in conjunction with the A201 General Conditions. It has the general conditions written in itself. So it defines its own general conditions, whereas the other three documents are used in conjunction with this document. It goes into a little bit more depth there because remember the A104 is the abbreviated version. So you have your general conditions, you have your owner contractor agreement. It is also likely that the contractor is going to retain a subcontractor or subcontractors. The document to define that relationship is your A401. That one's pretty simple, one choice there. That's a very popular agreement. We see that one a lot. And so that's going to define that relationship. And then there also may be a surety that's involved, a surety being a party that agrees to make payment to the owner in the event of non-performance by the contractor. We have a few bond forms to define that relationship. So the A310, the A312, and the A313 are going to ensure fulfillment of the bid, performance, payment, and any warranty obligations. And these forms can be used in conjunction with each other. Bonds and insurance can get pretty complicated, and we have a lot of resources that help you define these forms and learn more about them, which I will point to at the end of the presentation. But there you have it. From a contractor subcontractor perspective, you have our conventional family. So to kind of summarize, here's the list of the documents we just went over. And then Ben, do you have a few things to add?
Not really. I think you hit it all.
All right. Thank you very much. And then so there are some differences, and you can take a look at our website, and I'll show you exactly where you can look through the entire abbreviated owner-contractor agreement versus any of these other agreements, because there are some key differences there. So in addition to our conventional documents, and I referenced this a little bit earlier, there are also these small project documents. And just to preview, we're only going to go over one document because this family is only comprised of 2 total documents. These are our short form agreements, and they're stripped down to the essentials, basically. They're very short, and they're for small projects. So a small project is still going to have an owner with separate contracts for the architect and the contractor. And in this case, you would use the A105. This is the short form owner contractor agreement. Again, you'll want to take a look at the sample of this document online, which I'll show you exactly how to do. Whether you're working with a small project or not is completely subjective, and I think Ben can attest to that as well. So Ben, do you have anything to add in terms of what's a small project, what's a large project? How is that subjective?
Yes, it is subjective, of course, and I did also want to mention the differences between what we have is the A104 and the other longer ones. But as far as the differences between this family, the small projects family, and the conventional family, they are very similar. They're set up in a similar manner, as you can see on the screen. With A105, the short form agreement, it doesn't have any dispute resolution. There aren't any dispute resolution clauses, and it is set up as a stipulated sum agreement. So there's no cost plus options. So those are two differences. They are certainly not the only differences. There are many differences, but those are two important differences between this family, the small group, and the other conventional family. As far as within the conventional family, we do have, as Sarah mentioned, the A104, which is the abbreviated version. So that's what we'd like to call the medium version. And then the A201 agreements, which are A101, A102. Yeah, if you go back, thank you. A101, A102, and A103. Those I'm referring to as the A201 agreements because they refer to A201 general conditions. Those are longer. Those are for a larger project. And so for a larger project, there's just more detail. So there are some differences between medium and large. And so again, A104 is medium. I'm calling A101, 102, and 103 large. So first of all, you have to use separate general conditions. A201, that's a difference. And there's also an insurance and bonds exhibit that goes with each of those top three agreements. So that goes over just insurance and bond information, whereas the medium version A104 has, just like it has its own general conditions that are combined and condensed from A201, A104 and A105 for that matter have more basic coverage obligations that are embedded in their respective documents. There are some other differences between the medium and the large, and again, this is not an exhaustive list. So you'll have to look at the samples on our website that you can see for free to get a better idea. But there are some other differences, such as, for example, all of the documents allow the contractor to request evidence of the owner's financial arrangements to pay for the work prior to commencement of the work. However, only the A201 allows the contractor to request that kind of evidence after the work has been started, but only in certain circumstances. So that's another difference. A201 also has language where the owner can designate its financial information as confidential, and there are some other differences like concealed or unknown conditions, human remains, burial markers, archaeological sites, and unmarked wetlands that A201 goes over that the medium and of course the small don't really cover. So those are, again, some differences, not an exhaustive or complete list by any means, but there are some of the main differences. And so you generally want to use the largest or longest document that you and your client can tolerate, so to speak. So you can start with the large, and if that seems like it's overkill, you can go down to the medium, and then of course the small is for extremely small or short jobs.
Thank you, Ben. So yeah, as Ben hinted at, there's a few key differences. Abbreviated, of course, comes with a cost in terms of less risk management. So you definitely want to take a look at those documents. And we post every document in full on our website, so you can really take a look at what's in there before you choose which one you'd like to use in your project. So that's going to wrap up our coverage of agreements. We covered the most popular ones. There is, of course, plenty more, and I'll show you where you can do some more browsing, but those were the most pertinent ones that we wanted to show you. And now we're going to take some time, and I'm going to hand it back over to Ben pretty soon so that he can take us through some of the key forms and exhibits. So these are administrative forms and exhibits that go at the end of the agreements. So they are not standalone agreements by any means, but they can be used for various purposes. So Ben, I'm going to bring up some of our key forms here. Again, not all of them, but the ones that we decided were most pertinent, we most wanted to share for you. And Ben's going to give a pretty quick overview of just what each of these forms are.
Thank you, Sarah. So as Sarah mentioned earlier, we have over 200 total documents, and they're generally divided into agreements, and the agreements are in different families, and then forms. A form is something like a change order or a payment application that you see here, where it's just a simple, usually 1 or 2 page document to achieve some objective during the project. And so the documents that you see here on this page are for the conventional family, but again, we have other families, and so there are other versions of these documents for the different families. For example, there's a design build family, and we have design build versions of these forms. And there are other families as well, like construction manager advisor, construction manager as constructor, and there are in most cases those versions of these as well. But just to quickly go over each of these documents, so G701 is a change order, and that is to change something, anything, on a construction project as long as all the parties agree. So it is oftentimes thought of in money, dollars and cents, and or time. And certainly that's probably the case most of the time, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be literally any type of change at all, as long as all the parties agree to the terms of that change. G702 and G703 form our payment application document. And so a contractor is applying for payment to an owner, and the architect certifies that payment. And again, you can see that there are other versions. So there's a subcontractor version, just like there is for a change order. And of course, that's from a subcontractor to a contractor. And so the continuation sheet is just a table where you break down the line items of work. And then G702, called the application and certificate for payment, is the cover sheet, the top sheet, the actual application, where the contractor or the subcontractor is applying for payment and asking for a specific amount. And in the case of the contractor to owner version, the normal version, that is where an architect will certify that payment. G704 is a certificate of substantial completion. We do not have one for final completion, but this certifies that the job is substantially complete. And so the parties agree that the job is substantially complete as of this date, and you can attach an inspection list or punch list of items that are still needed to be completed or corrected, but the owner can still use or occupy the project for its intended use. G706 and G706A are both affidavits. So 706 is an affidavit of payment, basically stating that all debts and claims have been satisfied, including to various subs. And then G706A is a contractor's affidavit of release of liens, stating the contractor is not going to file a lien on the property. And then you have to actually attach the lien release to this document. We don't publish a lien release itself because requirements vary by state for the release or waiver of liens. So these documents, and this document in particular, G706A, is an affidavit. So it's not actually the lien release in and of itself. You still need that lien release, and you would attach it to that affidavit along with the final request for payment. G709 and G714 are similar. 709 is a request for information related to a proposed change. So any party can use this just to request information about a potential change. And G714 is a construction change directive, which is a directive to the contractor to make a change in the work where that change needs to be done quickly. And so if the parties have not reached agreement, then you can't use a change order, but you can use a CCD to get something done quickly so that there's not a delay on the project.
All right, thank you, Ben. I'll add to that if you ever need any assistance completing change orders, payment applications, and then that continuation sheet that goes along with it, in the follow-up email that you'll receive from AIA Contract Documents, we'll include a link that can give you a sign up for live training to complete these applications. We offer that monthly, in which we go through and complete some example forms and show you exactly how to do that in the online service. And we also have some written resources and short videos as well, since those are pretty popular and used pretty often in the online service. So now I'm going to hand it again back over to Ben, and he's going to go through some of the additional documents that cover some exhibits as well.
Okay, so I did mention the insurance and bonds exhibits, and so these are exhibits to the A101, A102, and A103. This is a little bit of a difference from the 2007 versions. We normally update documents on a 10-year cycle, and so the current versions are from 2017, and the prior versions were from 2007. And this is for the conventional family. The other families are updated in different times, different years. But in 2017, what we did was we took the insurance and bonds information out of the general conditions. So it used to be an A201. Now it's in an exhibit to the agreement, the owner-contractor agreement, like A101, A102, A103. And again, this is for a larger job, so A104 and A105 have their own, but with the larger group of documents, we took that information, but dealing with insurance and bonds, out of the general conditions and moved it into an exhibit. So it is a separate exhibit, but it is part of those documents. And those documents, the exhibits, any and all exhibits, are included in your purchase. Okay, thank you. And so the next group is the digital practice documents. So a lot of the documents like A101, A102, A103, and others will refer to exhibits like the ones you see here, E203 for digital data, including BIM, Building Information Modeling. And then there are also those other two G documents for establishing protocols for dealing with digital data, and then also to deal with the BIM protocol, so Building Information Modeling Protocol. So these are exhibits, so they don't stand alone. What you would do is you would attach them to your agreement, like A101 or A102, et cetera, and that would all form the complete package. And so these exhibits, in a lot of cases, are mentioned specifically in the documents. Most agreements have a section that will be titled something to the effect of enumeration of contract documents, and it'll list the documents that are in what we call the contract documents, capital C, capital D, contract documents. And that's just the package of documents on the project. So the agreement will typically include itself, it'll list itself, and the general conditions, and exhibits, and digital practice documents, and any other drawing specifications, other addenda that you need to include. And then finally, it'll also reference a sustainable projects exhibit, which in the case of the conventional family is E204. And this is again, an exhibit, so it's attached to the agreement, and it deals with sustainability for a green or environmentally friendly project. And the parties essentially create a plan, a sustainability plan, with certain objectives that the parties agree to meet throughout the course of the project. So it lays that out. So this is a separate document, but it is an exhibit that would be attached to the agreement for sustainable projects, specifically to create a sustainability plan.
All right, thank you, Ben. The very last thing we have for you in terms of documents, before I briefly go through the website, is we just wanted to show that we do have some master agreements available, and those allow for multiple scopes of work to be added just through work orders, and that's under one master agreement. So we have both an owner contractor and a contractor submaster agreement with their work orders that you see there. Ben, do you have anything to add on master agreements?
Just a little bit more detail. I know we're running close to the time here, but so a master agreement is for an ongoing situation, what you might call on-call services. So in both these cases, it's a master agreement where the owner hires the contractor or contractor hires subcontractor for ongoing work. And then the work is actually performed under a separate document, which is a work order. Master agreement A121, and then you would so you'd execute that agreement, and then you would execute multiple work orders every time there's work, and the same process for contractor or subcontractor.
All right, thank you, Ben. So in just that fast, we have covered just about half an hour. We've showed you all the main documents we want to show you. I am going to wrap us up. If you have any questions, go ahead and enter those now. We can stay up after just a little bit to just cover any audience Q&A. But I just want to, as promised, show you the AIAcontracts.org website. If you ever want to get to know any of the documents that we went over today, then you can go to our Documents tab. You can search through the different documents, and then within each document, you're going to get a synopsis of what's going to be covered, and then the free sample PDF that we referenced throughout. And that's going to be the document in its entirety that, again, you can really get to know before committing to any documents. And then we're also always going to have our Learn tab. It's going to cover articles and webinars to help you learn more in terms of generally working with AIA contract documents. And finally, under our Support tab, AIA Contracts has two different support teams: tech support for questions about the online service, and then our document content support, which if you call or email, it's likely that you'll get Ben Siegel himself. As you could heard today, he is very knowledgeable, and you can give that line a call or an email if you have any questions about document content. So I think we have just about wrapped up. I see a couple questions coming through just asking if you'll receive a recording and where you can find the demo videos. That will all be included in our follow-up email from AIA Contract Documents, and you'll receive that in your inbox tomorrow. And then the final question I see here, just asking if there's one contract between the general contractor and the subcontractor. Ben, I believe there's the A401 that defines the contractor subcontractor. Are there any other documents that cover the GC sub relationship?
Well, there are. For one thing, there's the A421 that we talked about, the master agreement. And then there are, of course, other families of documents. So in the other families, there are contractor subcontractor agreements, like a 441, for example, which is in the design build family, but they are set up differently. So for today, we were just talking about the conventional family. So within the conventional family, it's really just a 401, or you could consider a 421 as part of that, the master agreement. So are there others? Yes, there are, but they're in different families, which we didn't really have the time to go over today.
All right, well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and thank you very much, Ben, for taking some time to impart your knowledge on us.
Thank you.
If there are any other questions, then feel free to direct those to the docinfo line. And thank you very much for your time, and please keep an eye out for an email from AIA Contract Documents. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day.